Let's travel back over 7,000 years, to the arid and scorching landscape of the Middle East. Under the relentless heat, a solitary shepherd walked with his animals. In his hands, a pouch made from a goat's stomach, filled with fresh milk. What he didn't know was that the heat and movement of his journey were transforming that liquid into something entirely different. When he opened the pouch, expecting to drink the milk that would sustain him, he found a strange, semi-solid mass oozing whey. This shepherd, unaware of what had happened, took a bite. It was cheese. But he didn't know that. In that moment, unknowingly, he had discovered one of the most complex and beloved foods in human history. The milk, transformed by forces mankind had yet to master, had become something far more enduring and nutritious. It was the beginning of cheese. This mistake, this accident, is the starting point of a journey that would span millennia. From that day forward, cheese would be shaped by the hands of shepherds, monks, kings, and farmers, each perfecting and passing down their techniques, creating a diversity of flavors and textures that are revered worldwide today. But at that first moment, all the shepherd knew was that the milk had changed, and what he held in his hands was unlike anything he had ever tasted. Now we travel to medieval Europe. The cathedrals rose imposingly, while in the shadowy recesses of monasteries, something extraordinary was happening. Away from the eyes of the world, in cold and silent cells, monks were patiently perfecting the craft of cheesemaking. These monasteries, places of devotion and silence, became true fermentation laboratories. In dark and damp caves, cheeses matured in a slow transformation. Each cave had its own humidity, its own climate, and the monks, watchful and patient, manipulated these environments with a wisdom passed down by word of mouth. There were no books or precise formulas. Only intuition guided the process. The cheeses that emerged from these places were as unique as the whispered prayers of the monks. Time was the key ingredient. Without rush, without forcing the process, cheese slowly aged, gaining a flavor and texture that couldn't be replicated elsewhere. Every slice of cheese carried the mystery of its origin, the touch of devout hands that understood it wasn't just about milk and rennet. It required patience and devotion. Imagine standing beside these monks in a silent monastery. The strong smell of curing cheese, the humid air almost palpable, the anticipation of months, perhaps years, to discover what that transformed mass of milk would become. Cheese was more than sustenance. It was a form of spirituality, something that transcends science. The story continues. Centuries later, during the European Renaissance, cheese reached a new status. It was no longer just a subsistence product for monks or shepherds. Now, it was a luxury in European courts. Kings and queens competed to see who could serve the rarest, most complex cheeses from distant regions. Imagine a banquet at the French or Italian court. Tables adorned with silver trays, where cheeses aged for years were displayed alongside fine wines. Cheese had become a centerpiece of royal banquets, a symbol of sophistication and wealth. The rarer the cheese, the greater the status of the one serving it. Kings and nobles knew that cheese was more than food. It was a representation of the power to control time. That piece of cheese, aged for months, sometimes years, was proof of patience and mastery. A well-aged cheese was like a hidden treasure, valued not just for its taste, but for the time dedicated to its creation. In the courts, cheeses became true gems. Every bite was a return to the past, a reminder that time can be manipulated, shaped, and transformed into something sublime. The European elite made cheese a symbol of opulence, and their tables reflected this transformation. The rarer and more distant the cheese, the higher the prestige of its host. But things change, they always do. With the advent of the Industrial Revolution and the discovery of pasteurization, cheese was finally no longer the exclusive symbol of the elites. Now, it was within everyone's reach. Milk, once perishable and difficult to preserve, was now transformed into cheeses that lasted months, and these cheeses could be sold to markets and consumed by common people. Louis Pasteur, with his discoveries about microorganisms, enabled cheese production on a large scale. Science had taken a leap, and with it, cheese became central to the diets of millions worldwide. From a symbol of power and exclusivity, it became a democratic food, available at every table. Still, even with this democratization, cheese did not lose its charm. Every piece of artisanal cheese, even the simplest, carries the mark of time and tradition. Camembert from France, Parmesan from Italy, Gorgonzola from Lombardy. All these cheeses have stories rooted in centuries of artisanal practices. Even in the industrial age, cheese retains its roots, its traditions, its stories. Today, cheese is part of our everyday lives. But it hasn't lost the mystery it holds. On supermarket shelves or on the tables of the most sophisticated restaurants, cheese still carries with it the heritage of centuries of tradition, of accidental discoveries, of patience and waiting. The most experienced cheesemakers know that cheese is not just a matter of formula or process. There's something inexplicable about it, something that transcends technique. No matter how much is studied, no matter how far science advances, cheese remains a mystery. What really happens during fermentation? How does time shape each piece uniquely? Why do some cheeses achieve unmatched flavor complexity? Cheese is a metaphor for human life. It reminds us that no matter how much we try to control time, it surprises us. Cheese is the result of waiting, patience, respect for natural processes that cannot be rushed. It is the ultimate expression that sometimes the best results come from letting things take their course. In the 19th century, cheese crossed the ocean and arrived in the New World. In America, it adapted to the new realities and vast climatic and cultural diversity of the continent. Here, cheese found new possibilities, new flavors, and over time, integrated into the daily life of the colonies. Brazil, for example, with its European heritage and its own traditions, developed its own cheese-making culture. Minas cheese, now one of the country's most famous, emerged on the farms of Minas Gerais, where European methods were adapted to the tropical climate and local conditions. Often made by hand, on small rural properties, Minas cheese carries the spirit of the Brazilian countryside, a tradition passed down through generations. But it wasn't just Minas cheese. Brazil, with its diversity, began producing unique varieties of cheese, like Queijo Coelho in the northeast and Queijo do Reino, inspired by Dutch Edam cheese. Over time, these cheeses became an integral part of Brazilian culture, served at celebrations, family gatherings, and in traditional dishes. The arrival of cheese in the New World was not just a territorial expansion. It was also an expansion of possibilities, where each region, each climate, each culture began creating its own cheeses, transforming an ancient food into something new and vibrant. Today, cheese faces new challenges and opportunities, at a crossroads between tradition and innovation. What began as an accidental discovery has evolved into one of the most beloved and diverse foods in the world. But just as the world changes, cheese must also keep up with these new times. We are living in an era of rediscovery of artisanal cheeses, where small producers around the world are reviving ancient and traditional methods. These cheeses, often produced on a small scale and handmade, offer not only a distinct flavor but also a deep connection to history and territory. It's the terroir that comes to life in cheese. Terroir, a French concept, defines how the soil, climate, and even the pasture of animals directly influence the flavor and texture of cheese. A piece of cheese is not just a meal. It's a slice of the landscape and the time in which it was produced. On the other hand, innovation has played a significant role. New technologies are transforming cheesemaking, opening doors to non-traditional milk varieties, such as buffalo milk and even plant-based milks. The science of fermentation, always a part of the process, is now studied with greater precision, allowing producers to create new flavors and textures while maintaining the essence of traditional methods. However, there's a growing movement of consumers demanding a return to natural products, avoiding industrial processes. There is also a desire for connection to cheese's history, to know who made the food, where it was made, and how. Cheeses with a designation of origin, like the famous Serra da Estrela cheese in Portugal or Roquefort in France, are valued not only for their taste but for their visceral connection to their roots. At the same time, the cheese-making industry is seeking sustainable solutions. Milk and cheese production, often associated with environmental concerns, is being reinvented. New regenerative grazing practices and animal welfare are emerging, and even technologies that produce high-quality vegan cheeses are being developed to meet the demand for more ethical and sustainable products. But innovation doesn't stop there. In laboratories, scientists are working on creating cheese through biotechnology, fermenting milk proteins without the need for cows, yet retaining the authentic flavor and texture. This is the future of cheese, a food as old as civilization, adapting to remain relevant in a rapidly changing world. The history of cheese, from the shepherd who accidentally discovered it, to the monks who perfected it in monasteries, the kings who consecrated it as a symbol of power, and the scientists today exploring new ways to produce it, is a story of transformation, patience, and respect for time. Every piece of cheese you taste is more than just food. It is a connection to human history, to the landscapes and cultures that created it. Whether it's a fresh Minas cheese or a Parmesan aged for years, cheese carries within it the essence of a process that transcends generations, cultures, and technologies. And just as cheese evolved from that mistake under the desert sun, it will continue to evolve. With every bite, with every new flavor we experience, we are writing another chapter in the long and fascinating history of cheese, a food that, even after millennia, never ceases to surprise us. The future of cheese, like its past, is made of mystery and discovery. A piece of the past, a promise of the future, always present at our table. Did you enjoy learning this incredible story of cheese? Then don't forget to like if you did. Subscribe to the channel for more fascinating stories and curiosities like this one, and activate the bell so you don't miss any new videos. Share this content with your friends who love to learn something new, and comment below on your favorite cheese. Let's continue this conversation in the comments. See you next time.